can't believe we are talking about portable CD players in 2025, and yet here we are. Now in January, FiiO sent me its DM13 portable CD player, the Skylight edition. I have it here. Looks like this and this. And then 2 months prior to that, so at the very end of last year, Moondrop sent me their DiscDream 2 Ultra. Looks like this, back, sides like this, and then together you can see them like this. So today we're going to talk about two portable CD players, and we're going to look at them with music you might read about on Resident Advisor, on Pitchfork, on Rolling Stone, and maybe on the NME. But we're going to look at these two CD players with more of an emphasis on the FiiO because it does more than the Moondrop. Now that's not to say that the Moondrop doesn't have its advantages, because it absolutely does.
This episode is brought to you by Munich High-End, the world's leading international audio show, running May 15 through 18 at the MOC.
So we will predominantly look at the FiiO DM13 with Moondrop playing counterpoint in places, and I must stress in places, because there are a few minor things and one major thing that the FiiO can do that the Moondrop cannot. So let's start with pricing on both of these portable CD players. The DM13 sells for €200 in its Skylight edition, but you can save €50 if you forego the transparent lid, and the DiscDream 2 Ultra is much more expensive at €385. Now, I don't have the more affordable non-Ultra DiscDream 2, so I've no idea how that fits into this story. So I tested the FiiO and the Moondrop with a pair of Meze 105 AER or Air, using their 3.5mm terminated cable because I don't have a balanced cable, there isn't one in the box. And then to cover off the balanced option, I hooked in a pair of Campfire Bonneville IEMs using the 4.4mm termination, and occasionally I connected the FiiO FT3, also overbalanced. And if you're as old as me, you will remember that we didn't get balanced connections on portable CD players in the 90s. And I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing that the Moondrop's connections are on the side of the unit and not on the front as they are with the FiiO. Now on paper, the FiiO is the more powerful of the two, and according to the manufacturer's website, the DM13 pushes 660 milliwatts into 32 ohms over its balanced socket, whereas the Moondrop gives us only 1/3 of that, so 222 milliwatts into 32 ohms. So if your headphones are thirstier than mine, I would lean towards the FiiO. Let's do a bit of DAC spotting now. The FiiO's internal DAC is built around a pair of Cirrus Logic chips, and they are the 43198, I think. Now, for its decoder, the Moondrop also uses a pair of Cirrus Logic DAC chips, but they use a different model. I think they are the 43131, and Google Gemini tells me that those 43131 chips integrate a headphone amplifier, but the FiiO's DAC chips do not. So we can deduce from this that the DM13 uses separate chips for its headphone drive, and a quick visit or quick jump back to FiiO's website confirms as much. I think they use a pair of SGM8262 to drive the headphones themselves. So this could explain why the DM13 is more powerful than the DiscDream 2 Ultra. But trying to deduce the sound quality of an audio device based solely on its DAC or headphone chip is a bit like trying to determine the maximum speed of a car based solely on its engine specs and without knowing anything about the car's drivetrain or its weight. So we can't say how fast it will go. And I guess a bit like how we have to drive a car to know how it feels and how fast it goes, we have to listen to our audio devices to know how they sound. And I found it exceptionally difficult to separate these two portable CD players on sound quality alone. So maybe the FiiO sounded a little crisper with Virtual Dreams 2, and crispness is what you want when you're listening to 90s Japanese ambient techno. And maybe the Moondrop sounded a little softer and more forgiving with Built to Spill, because softness and forgiveness is what you want from a brash indie rock record like Untethered Moon. And maybe the FiiO delivered harder hitting sub bass on Christian Vogel's remix of Radiohead's Mixomatosis. It's called Remixomatosis. But one thing that did stand out was how the Moondrop stages all music with greater width and greater height than the FiiO. But mostly the differences were a maybe this or a maybe that. And these audible differences, such as they are, carry over to the line level outputs on each player. So both can be connected to an integrated amplifier with ease. And if you force me to choose only one of these portable CD players based solely on its sound quality, I'd probably go with the Moondrop. But choices are rarely made on sound quality alone. For example, both devices offer mini Toslink outputs for connection to a third-party DAC. But the FiiO holds two hardwired advantages over the Moondrop. It offers a balanced line level output, and its mini Toslink socket doubles as a 3.5mm digital coax output, although I couldn't get my cable to work on that. And also the socketry was it didn't feel like the jacks were going in a nice firm click. Everything just felt a bit soft and a bit squidgy, and I thought I'd broken one. Maybe I did break the coax connection, I don't know, but I couldn't get it to work. Maybe it was my cable, maybe it was the connection. I don't know. And yet, even bigger differences exist between the DM13 and the DiscDream 2 Ultra. Bigger differences that will more strongly influence a buying decision. So for example, if we get hands-on with each unit, and if you get hands-on with each unit, you will feel the price differential more than you'll hear it. So the FiiO is smaller and lighter than the Moondrop, but I think the build quality on the Moondrop is just a cut above the FiiO. And according to their respective websites, both CD players are wrapped in an aluminium alloy shell, but the Moondrop's industrial design, it looks and feels much classier. That said, the FiiO's player control buttons are easier to access because they run across the top of the lid here, whereas the Moondrops sit along the front of the edge of the unit, right? And that means they're not as convenient to access from above, but their sort of larger size makes them easier to press, and they feel nicer as well. And according to Moondrop's website, the reason these buttons are along the front lip here is because you can have the lid open during playback, and you can't do that with the FiiO. The lid must be closed for playback to take place and before the disc will spin up. So you can do that, and then you've got to push it down. You have to. But it should be pointed out that neither unit is as portable or as small as the portable CD players we had back in the 90s. Now, both of these portable CD players come with electronic shock protection that works exceptionally well. And in both cases, this is done with an elastically damped mechanism and a data buffer, right? So elastically damped means that you can push on this mechanism here and it's sort of spring loaded. But the FiiO's buffer, the FiiO's data buffer, can be turned off, not to improve sound quality, but I guess to reduce battery consumption. Talking of which, Moondrop rates its runtime at 8 hours and FiiO at 10. So if we look carefully at the specs, we can see that the FiiO has the very slightly larger battery, but in my day-to-day testing, they both came out roughly the same at 7 hours between charges. So if there is a difference between battery life, it's not significant. But the FiiO unit offers a desktop mode that has it draw only wall wart power to leave the battery untouched. Now again, this doesn't elevate sound quality, but it is useful for anyone worried about long-term battery health. Now, recharging is done via USB-C on both units, but the FiiO has a second USB-C socket. So what's that all about? The answer is you can use the DM13 to rip CDs directly to a thumb drive attached to the back of the player. But you've got to make sure you update the FiiO's firmware to version 25 or later to prevent failed rips. Now, CD ripping will be a handy feature for some users, no doubt, but it doesn't come without compromises. So firstly, the USB connections are counterintuitive, so you've got to follow the instructions carefully. Secondly, rips take place in real time, which means that it will take you as long to rip a disc as it would to play it. And thirdly, the resulting files are WAVs. Now this makes sense because the FiiO's internal processing probably isn't powerful enough for FLAC encoding. So you'll need a computer to convert the WAVs to FLACs if you want to, or MP3s or whatever, and also a bit of software to add the metadata. Now I use DB PowerAmp for the format conversion and MP3 tag for file tagging. And if you're wondering why the Moondrop's USB-C recharge port is labeled USB audio, it's because it can also be used as a USB DAC, which is something the FiiO cannot do. How the turntables, the tables turn. But then the DM13 counters with another two bonus features. One that I don't like and one that I kind of do. So the first is disk memory. So the FiiO player will remember where you left off with a disc so that the next time you play it, it picks up from that point. Now, personally, I find this irritating because if I remove a disc, I expect to go back to the start when I next play it. But I'm a grumpy old dude, so what do I know? And the second bonus feature I am more bullish about, and that is the DM13 has a Bluetooth output. So yeah, this portable CD player can talk to Bluetooth headphones. And the aptX HD codec also comes along for the ride. So I connected the Bowers & Wilkins PI8 to the DM13 without issue. But I don't think I would use this feature in the long run. I mean, why use a CD player for Bluetooth when you can use a smartphone? And that's a question many will be asking probably about this entire video. And in the general sense, I think that's a bit like asking why a fruit and veg store doesn't sell sausages. Because portable CD players aren't for people who are happy with their streaming sources. To state the obvious, they are for people who want to play CDs. Now me, I use Roon Arc when I'm out and about with headphones because the Roon Arc smartphone app gives me access to my entire Roon library no matter where I am in the world. So Roon Arc is effectively my private streaming service. And last time I checked, I had almost 8,000 releases in that library. Now, can you imagine trying to cart around 8,000 CDs on the off chance you'd want to listen to one of the Future Sound of London's Mind Maps compilations? I can't, because that would mean I'd have to travel everywhere with a transit van full of CDs, and that would be insane. But I would like to thank Roon for sponsoring this video. Now we come to what I think is the Moondrop's biggest weak point, in that I don't think it's an outdoor player at all, because it's larger and heavier than the FiiO, yes, but also the lid doesn't clip or isn't secured in any way. You can flip it up and you put it down and that's all there is. So the lid doesn't lock as the FiiO's does. And that makes it, I think, more of a homebody, good for the occasional tray table on a plane or a train. Whereas the FiiO, on the other hand, is much more of an all-rounder. So it will go outside, even if its screen is very, very difficult to read in bright sunshine. And the FiiO gives us the added bonuses of a balanced analog line level output for when we're at home. It gives us Bluetooth connectivity and CD ripping. And we didn't get those features on portable CD players back in the 90s either. And the FiiO is cheaper than the Moondrop, which I think in turn is more of an art object. And lastly, yes, Both units play gaplessly and both are made in China. Anyway, that's all from me for today. Like and subscribe according to your preference, and hit us up on Patreon if you want to see an exclusive video about the Marantz Model 10. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching. Let's wrap up this video with an album recommendation. This is Solid Doctor's Beats Means Highs. So it's a spin-off from Fila Brasilia. So first released in '96 by Steve Cobby, but without Dave McSherry. Now, in one word, you might describe this album as down-tempo, but I think it's a combination of laid-back grooves, funk, and maybe early trip-hop. And as with most of Steve Cobby's work, there's a sprinkle of weirdness on top. Now, best of all, the mastering on this album is top shelf. It has a dynamic range score of 12.